I just wanted to make this video really quickly just to try to encapsulate the craziness that had been the Nerdfighteria, the Vlogbrothers fan group, their community, in the past couple of months, because it's been crazy and I didn't even know that this much change, real life changes, can be possible just by something that was organized on the internet. So last night I made this timeline just to try to make sense of what went down, because it was kind of overwhelming, even as someone who's been observing from far and had very minor participation. Let's just start with saying that John Green is in his villain era in the best way. In July 11th, 2023, this year, he posted his first rage letter. And this thing was really just a catalyst for what would come next. He had been researching tuberculosis and the effects of this disease that had been the most deadly disease of ever of humankind. So he put out this letter to Johnson & Johnson. It was an open letter, and it was really, the title really does it justice. It was barely contained rage. And it was a call to action. He instructed his followers, or people who were watching him, on how we can together say that this is not okay, what Johnson & Johnson were doing. What they were basically doing was that they were trying to have a secondary patent on the bedaquiline drug. I might be saying a few facts wrong here and there, or a few names, but he's not someone in the medical field, but he did all this research to understand this issue and then communicate it to a wider audience, who then would understand it and fight back or write letters or say that they're not okay with the way that it's being handled. So the gist of it is that there is a disease that is curable, that is not being cured in many parts of the world, because mostly access to the diagnosis that is efficient for tuberculosis is not there for within the reach of many in the world. So what he was saying was that if Johnson & Johnson renew their patent and not allow other generic tests to be made, products, then this would mean that up to 6 million people are not going to be able to access this tuberculosis tests in the coming 4 years. So it was a very big deal, because a lot of these people would end up not being diagnosed right, and they would pass away from tuberculosis, which is right now a treatable disease. So hearing about this, obviously any human being would be compelled to do something about it, like once we understood what it's about. So we heard this message and we went, it was over the 4-minute limit that the Vlogbrothers had been following for the past several years. A lot of the videos they did this year was. So in July 11, he put out this message earlier in the summer, right? And then 3 days later, on the 14th of July, we have good news. Johnson & Johnson decided that they're not going to be, they kind of were overwhelmed by the response or by the protests that they were receiving. A lot of people were telling them they're not okay with this. They were sending them emails, they were calling them on their hotline. And it was just, they overturned their decision to renew this patent. So now generic tests could be made, and people in countries where the Johnson & Johnson tests are not affordable would be able to buy the generic versions instead. There's no patent on it now. They still have the patent, but they're not going to be banning generic models of these tests to be made. So, very weird group of people really, the Nerdfighteria. And then in August 12th, I just wanted to put this on the timeline because Hank Green put up one of my favorite videos that the Vlogbrothers have put out ever, which was the Puss in Boots 2 analogy. And I just loved that video so much, I just wanted to include it. It was there in the August 12th video. And then we had the second bomb. Now this was preceded by a Threads post that John Green made. And he just put out casually this message that was like, certain people should, anticipate what comes tomorrow. I'm paraphrasing here. And then on the 12th of September, he dropped the second bomb. This rage letter was directed at the Danaher and Cepheid. I think that's Cepheid, the name of the company. So now people were ready. We were already trained, right? With the previous Johnson & Johnson's letter situation. Now the Nerdfighters are like, okay, give us an email, give us the phone number. Who are we talking to, Now in this barely contained rage letter, we have a call to action to lower the prices of the TB test cartridges. So there are two types of TB tests that John Green made very clear in the video. And one of them is for the, it's a regular testing kit that they sell for $10 or used to sell for $10. And they have the drug-resistant TB tests that are sold for $15. Now his argument was that these tests don't cost that much, nearly as much to make. So John was arguing to reduce the price of these cartridges. And so he invited us to go and to ask to make this happen because the profit margins were ridiculous. Because in many countries, hospitals, people can't afford these tests. So he's just saying that they're making a ridiculous amount of profit for these cartridges. And then the nerd fighters, my goodness, they were actually a bit rude this time, I felt. Wherever you go on Instagram, on the Danaher Instagram, there, even Pantone's like post the color, you know, the colors set. It was just people being passive aggressive, people being funny, sometimes people being rude, but then also there were some threats. I'm not gonna say it was all non-toxic and everything, and I felt kind of bad about this actually, and I'd like to about the people who would be receiving this, the employees, the social media managers and stuff who would be reading all of this, would be overwhelmed by the calls. At some point they shut down the call center because too many people were calling them. And anyway, surprise, surprise, this was changed as well. They have pledged to reduce the price of the regular cartridges from $10 to $7.97, which isn't much, but I guess when you convert dollars to like other currencies in many parts of the world, this really would make a very big difference in the margins. The drug-resistant TB cartridges are still the same price, so that's something that we're still, you know, come on guys, you can do better. But I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here. On the 16th of September is when Hank Green kind of elaborated more on what TB is and how even he, as this big science educator who is behind a lot of the crash course videos that a lot of people have taken help from, even he didn't guess that this was the worst disease in history. And he made a video explaining what TB is, what it does to the body, what it does to our cells, how the drug-resistant variants form. This happened on the 16th, and on the 19th we had good news, which I just mentioned, I just talked about, that they reduced the price of the regular cartridges. And John Green kind of reprimanded some of the viewers who were kind of had a threatening tone. So I didn't see many threats. I mostly saw sass. People were kind of sassy, you know, in the comments. And I understand the rage and I understand where they were coming from, because really John put it in a very succinct way and Hank elaborated on really the cruelty and the effect of this disease and the number of lives it taken in history, and how now it makes no sense that more people should be suffering from TB just because, you know, people want to make more profits. So with all of this, I just felt like really I shared Hank's sentiment. He put out a video a few days later, I'm not sure, I think this was yesterday, yeah, it was the day before yesterday, yeah, on Friday. Yeah, Hank put out a video on Friday, and that video was what inspired me to make this one actually, because I really felt proud to be a part of this community. I had written down a letter for Danaher, and I don't think it was read because I received an email saying that it wasn't open. I tried to be polite because I was just like, I don't know who's gonna be reading this on the other end, and I was like, listen, I know you're receiving a lot of emails at this time and it might be a bit overwhelming, but I want to add my voice here and talk about how I live in one of the countries where it would make a difference to have cheaper testing kits for most medicines, for many other medicines other than TB, but that's another conversation. But even with TB, it would be really good to have more affordable medicines for a country with a weaker currency, or a country where access to medicine is not really easy for many people. It's not within reach. So I had written down the short email and sent it, and I did just this tiny thing that, you know, it took me, what, 10 minutes? Watched the video, wrote down this email, and I thought, okay, I'm just one person, but like every one of the people who watched the video and took action in that direction, focused action, were what led to this group or to these companies to reevaluate what they thought to do and to reverse it or to start moving in a different direction. So that just made me like imagine the possibilities of the internet, really, like just this whole community and what we've been doing with Hank, with John, with the Nerdfighters. I've been interacting with a few of the Nerdfighters as well on YouTube and even on Reddit in the past, and I know that they're based in the United States, but the problems they're talking about are global, and they have expanded their horizons, their empathy to people beyond their borders and beyond their territories. And I know ideally everyone talks about how we should do that by default, but it's really hard to imagine the struggles of people who are entirely different from you, who had entirely different backgrounds, and to see how people are driving changes like this, are in the forefront of causes where the problems or the struggles of people they're not immediately connected to are voiced, and how people rally behind them and rally behind such causes and don't look at the people who be suffering from the lack of TB tests just as statistics. It's really inspiring for me, and it was really cool to see what's possible on the internet. I think that's my main thing. I feel like I'm kind of rambling at this point, and I just want to say that I'm proud to be a part of this community. And as Hank put it really succinctly in his video a couple of days ago, it's a weird feeling, really. I can't imagine how they're feeling, the brothers, John and Hank. I don't know how they've been feeling, and this is probably, Hank did say that this might be the biggest thing they did as a community, you know, with this community that they formed over the past decade and so. If you're a fellow Nerdfighter, hi, you're welcome to join this community as well. I don't know what this is going to turn into, but as someone who's working in a non-governmental organization where we're tackling these really overwhelming issues, you know, rapid urbanization, chaotic urbanization, rural to urban migration that is all over the place, it's really difficult to even imagine the scale of housing crisis and the population, the food, water shortages. Like, it's just so many things going on here in this nation and in this region that it's just almost overwhelming to think about alleviating poverty or alleviating suffering for people on that scale, you know. But then when John was talking about 6 million people being affected by these tests, and he's talking about rallying people behind this, it genuinely felt like something that is not beyond reach, you know. Just by talking to one company or overwhelming 2 companies, let's say, to change their business model, you can make a difference in the lives of up to 6 million people. Like this, that was just mind-blowing to me. So just having these catalyst effects, figuring out what it is that we can do and what can be done by rallying up people, or what can be done by creating a string of events or putting together the right people, it's just like the possibilities of that are endless, I think. And I think this really illustrated that for me the past 2 months, what had been happening since July and what had been happening when the Nerdfighters really understood this issue and were really sympathizing with the position that potential TB victims or patients could be in. So I don't know, maybe I'm gonna, someday be involved in something similar. I'm really taking this seriously, the potential of having focused groups of people coming together and the potential of communicating issues or challenges that we're going through. And it really made me feel like, yeah, there are people who care out there. If you really explain it plainly and you show that you have good intentions, then even the people who were profiting from the suffering of a certain subset of people or a group of people can change their minds, whether to preserve their reputation or for some other reason, you know, their conscience or whatever. This was just such a cool thing to witness and to be a part of. And now I'm saying goodbye for real because I really have to go. The sun is down. It's awesome talking to you all.